So the purpose of this homework is to illustrate that, you know, first off, getting data and knowing what to do with it is not an easy thing. And so that's, you know, there's lots of issues with gathering statistics and then how do we analyze it? What do we make of it? But the most important process you need to understand is the first part of this process is not easy. And it requires a certain skill set. So you got to keep that in mind. Do not get discouraged if you have difficulty doing this, particularly if you have difficulty making it all work. That's part of the process. That's part of the learning. And really that's, you know, you got to think of it. You're getting anything that you get out of this is going to be directly correlated to what you put into it. So if you put minimum in, then you're going to get minimum out of it. And that's understandable. I'm not expecting you all to care as much as I do. I'm not expecting you guys to care as much as the next person. But what I'm trying to do is to illustrate to you how this stuff works. And then we'll move forward. So as I said, a few people were having concerns about these problems. And so let's do another one. So let's do number. Did someone have something to say, or is that just noise? You're allowed to say something if you have a question. So let's do number 4 on the homework. So this one asks you to do a Google search and determine the 15 highest free throw percentages of WNBA players. Now, I don't know how skilled you guys are at the Google search, but I literally typed in WNBA stats. It took me to the WNBA's webpage, and 30 seconds later, here I am. And for those of you who are difficult, you can't see. So the website that I went to is so I don't care where you get your information from as long as you think it's valid. So I went to stats.wnba.com. Now I understand that some of you might not be as literate when it comes to sports lingo as I am, or some other people. So if you're not sure how to get these things, then you got to ask. But just to illustrate what I did, let me go. Let me share this with you guys on the screen. So I went to the website statswnba.com. And I get to this web page, and then I'm gonna click on player stats, I guess. Or, you know, it depends. You can navigate this in lots of different ways. If I come up here to players, or if I see all player stats, then I can do, okay, regular season. So let's say I go to last year, 2019, and I go regular season, then I go to totals, and then what has happened? That doesn't make any sense. And what I can do is I can do, you know, there's lots of ways you can meander around this website. So I meander around this website and then I get some data. So let's go back. What we have to do now is we have to go to Excel and make sense of this data. So let's see if I can get my computer to work. So I'm going to open Excel, and then I'll share it with you guys in a second, once it opens up. So right now, you guys, hopefully everybody's seeing Excel. So what I'm going to do is I am going to, on another screen, I have it so I can read. So I can't read it off of the same screen. So those of you at home have to understand that, but I can enter the numbers. And so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to enter numbers in. So I'll read off the 15. And so the first one I see is 97.4. And again, maybe you have different websites that has different numbers. I don't know. I don't really care right now. I just want you to get numbers. 93, and then 93.0, and then 92.8, and then 91.7. And again, you can follow along on Excel if you want. You can do this by hand. I don't know what the best way to do it right now is. For every one of you learns differently. So 91.6, 90.9, 90.6, 89.2, 87.9, 87.2. I have 11 right now, so 86.7, 85, and then 84.8, and then 84.2. I think that's all I need. That's 15, I think. So remember, a quick way to highlight them to see how many you have. If I highlight them in the top left, right under where it says paste, you'll see that it has a number, and you'll see that it says 15 by 1. That means I have 1 column, 15 rows. So I have 15. So these are my percentages. So you might want to make it look pretty. You can highlight this, and I showed you this the other day. You can say merge and center, or maybe we don't merge and center. We make this one, you know, we widen this so it's a little better, and then maybe we center it a couple different ways. Maybe we want it all. I don't know. Doesn't matter how you want to do it, but here's my percentages. Heck, maybe I'll even highlight them. And so the problem says make a frequency distribution using 10 classes. Now, of course, you might say, well, that seems silly, O'Grady. There's only 15 numbers. Why would you use 10 classes, right? Well, you might, yeah. What's that? Oh, 5. I'm reading the wrong problem. All right, even so, you might say, why use 5, right? But let's use 5 anyhow. So remember, we're going to call these we'll use 5. So we'll call these our bins, and then we'll call this the frequency. By the way, would it be helpful if I put these spreadsheets on Canvas? I don't know if it would be helpful. I can do that for you guys. So let me make sure I save the stupid thing so we don't lose it. So let's save as. We'll browse. We'll go to desktop. We'll go to fall. We'll go to Math 1040. And let's do WNBA free throws. If I could spell, the world would be a better place. And so what are my bins going to be? Well, I need to look at my data. What are my lowest values? What are my highest values? So I'm going anywhere between, say, 84 and 100. So that's like, let's say 15, right? 15 values. Does that make sense? So maybe we'll split them up in that manner. So maybe if we go, the first one will be up to 87. And then the next one would be up to 90, and then 93, and then 96, and then say 100. Do you understand how I'm doing this? And if you don't, please ask. Yeah, you have a question?
Yes, sir. That's where I don't understand.
Yeah, okay, so I'm looking at my percentages. The smallest number I have is 84.2. Correct? The largest number I have is 97. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to round. I'm going to round down to 84 for that. I don't have to do it. It's just what I'm choosing to do. This isn't like, you could do however you want. Now you could say, I'm going to make my bins 40, 50, 60, and 70. Well, guess what? That you ain't going to get any information if you do it that way, because those all are less than the numbers you have. So I said this on last Wednesday. A good strategy is to take your lowest and then your largest in this case, and then you can round to make it easier. So I'm thinking of this as roughly between 85 and 100. That's what my mind is thinking. So that means if I want 5 bins, I'm going to divide that many, which is 15, by 5. And so I'm going to make my bins be roughly 3 apart. Does that make sense? So what's 3 more than 84? 87. What's 3 more than 87? 90. So that's where I'm getting these numbers from. That doesn't mean that you couldn't choose different numbers. You could choose whatever you want. Remember, the goal is to get useful data. These might be terrible numbers to choose. And what I visualize choosing these bins might be something different than what you visualize if you choose different bins. Do we get that? And that doesn't make my analysis better or worse than yours or vice versa. We don't know. The point is, right now, we just want to teach you how to do this. We're not saying the way you're doing it or even the way I'm doing it is correct. We're saying it is one way of doing it. Do we get that? It's just a way. It ain't the way, it's a way. Right? You remember those words you learned in a little high school class, middle school? This, or you're supposed to say the if it's only one thing, or it's a or an if it's multiple things. This is a method, not the method, a method. Maybe there's a million others. Maybe mine's the worst there is on the planet. I am just showing you a way. I hope that makes sense. Okay, now we could count these by hand if we wanted. How many are less than 87? Well, how many are less than 87? We get 1, 2, we get 4. How many are less than 90 but bigger than 87? Well, we have 1, 2, 3. How many are bigger than 90 but less than 93? So that would just be what? 2, right? Or no, how many? Let me say that again. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3. And then 1, 2, 3, 4. So we'll have 4 here. And then we'll have 2 and 1. So you'll notice that there was one nuance here. The one number was 93. So I have to decide, do I want to, how am I deciding what bin does it go in? I'm not even saying there's a right or wrong answer. Now let's check that we did this correctly. How many do I count? What's 4 and 3? 7. 7 and 4 is 11. 11 and 3 is what? 14, right? I'm missing. Did I miss someone? So let's do it again. I have 84. I want to go up to 87. So I have these 4. And then I don't want to go past, I want to go up to, but not 90. So I have these 3. And then I don't want to cross 93. So I have 1, 2, 3. I had 5 here. I missed one. 5 here. Now, the way I just counted, the way I didn't know which one that I wanted to put the 93 in, which bin does it belong? Remember, there's that frequency function that Excel uses. It has a default method for that. So maybe let's check the Excel frequency. And I think I can't do that. Well, yeah, I can. I think I can. So I'm going to highlight this, and then I'm going to hit the function here, and then I got to go down to frequency. So I highlight the whole column, and then what I have to do is I hit OK, and it's going to take me here. So I put this guy in. Excuse me, I hit that wrong. This guy, or my data, they go in the first column. My bins go here. And then I can't just hit OK. I have to hit Control Shift Enter. And when I do that, you'll see that it did it slightly different. It put that 93 in a different one. It chose to, it didn't choose the same bin that I did. It has a default way of counting. I counted differently. Does that mean I'm correct and they're wrong? No, it means that there's a convention. Their convention says, okay, we are up to and including. So they're including 93 in that bin. I didn't. I put 93 in the bin above. Does anybody have a question about this? Again, let me reiterate. Are they wrong and I'm right or vice versa? No, that's not what we're saying. We're saying their function has a built-in way. So imagine you have two boxes. In the one box, we say it's going to go from 0 to 10, and the other box is going to go from 10 to 20, right? Well, then we have to decide, where does 10 go if we have the number 10? Right? So then, it's, remember these things you learned in like an algebra class? You would have inequalities, and you'd have strict inequalities. You might have less than or equal to. We have to decide, does the number 93, does it go in the box up to 93, or is we saying that's the box 93 and higher? And you'll see what the way that Excel's default counting method is, it goes up to and including 93, where I didn't include 93 in it. So that means their picture is going to be different than mine. Now, maybe not by much, but it could be different. Okay, so now, does anybody have a comment about that? So this right here, this is my frequency table. So, or my frequency distribution, if you will. So maybe, I wonder if we can't copy and paste. That's a shame. So we'll choose either one. We'll just use mine for the sake of argument. We don't need both. We'll just use mine. So let's go back to our share, and let's go here. I want to minimize this. You guys should be seeing a whiteboard, I think. And at home, I don't know if you see what's going on in the back. You might just see the whiteboard. And what I want to do is I just want to put my frequency distribution. I'm going to draw it by hand. So I have my bins. So here were my bins. My bins were 80, everything less than 87. And there were 4. And then 87 through 90, or I guess technically 89, this would be 3. And then it would be 90 through 90 or 92. And then I had 5. And then it would be 93 through 95. And there were 2, and then it would be 96 and up. And there was 1. So you might have to sort of think about how I reasoned it that way. I hope you will. I think it might not be obvious right away, but I hope you'll think about it. Remember, you imagine these bins as being like a box. And we're going to look for all the numbers less than 87, and we're going to throw them in one box. And then everything bigger than 87, so that would be 87 and an 87 point anything else goes in the next box. That's what we're saying. Okay, so let's get back to Excel. Oh, if I share this, I think you get to see both. Wow, let's get back to Excel. Okay, now I want to make my histogram. So a real easy way to make a histogram is once you have this distribution, you can just highlight it. And when you highlight it, this little box comes up. That's the quick analysis box. You can go to charts and you can go to cluster. That's the way I would tell you to do it. And remember, once you go in here, if you right click on any bar, what you can do is you can format the way it looks. So I right click on this and I go to format, and you notice that I can change the width. I can make them skinny. I can make them quote unquote wider. And if you want to make it look just like a histogram, you can make them like this. And then of course, don't forget, if I go up top, I can get different styles that are built in. Maybe I want them to have sort of a different, look at this. This is like a little, a nice little different style of chart. Maybe I want it to look like this. So again, let me reiterate, you can get different styles by moving, look at all the options up here, or you can go in and make it your own, however you want to do it. Does anybody have a question about this? So of course then we can go here, it's not hard, you can just change the title, you can say free throw percentages. And there you go. And you could even label your axis. I mean, again, it's how do you want to present it? I don't care how you do it. If you draw these by hand, I'm fine with it. I am telling you that a skill that is not a bad skill to learn is how to make things look pretty on a computer. It's going to take time, but any good skills take time. You don't wake up one day and say, oh crap, baby, I'm in the WNBA. Look at me, I didn't do anything. That ain't how it works. You don't wake up one day and become a software engineer for Google. Right? You have to learn skills, and you learn skills by doing and doing and doing, whatever those skills are. Now, again, you guys might say, I don't enjoy these skills, and I can appreciate that. And then I would tell you, then you don't have to spend that much time and effort on it. Okay. Does anybody have a question about this? Now, how do we get our O-give? Well, to get our O-give, that's the, I don't know. I just call it a cumulative distribution. We want to count our frequencies as we go. So how do I get that pretty picture? I come over here, and next to my frequency, I determine how do they accumulate. So I might type here cumulative. And then how do they accumulate? Well, the first box has 4. What do we have after the second box? We now have 4 and 3, which is 7. And then 7 and 5 is 12. And then 12 and 2 is 14. And then 14 and 1 is 15. So maybe you want to, you can call this whatever you want, but for the sake of me going to give it to you guys on Canvas, this is your histogram, if you want to call it that, or bar chart. And now that we have how they accumulate, we can make what they call this O-jive or O-give. And that just shows you how the data accumulates. Before we do that, though, it's worth pointing out, if you look at this histogram, as you might imagine, if you've ever shot a basketball, there's going to be very few people who are near perfect. And you would imagine that everybody is sort of clumped in, maybe not necessarily the middle, but there's got to be some middle somewhere. Now, this picture doesn't do a great job of telling us that, but also don't forget, we only chose 15 people. What if we chose 50 instead? We might have more useful information. All right, so if we want this little O-jive, then what we do is we have to highlight this bin and then this bin, and then we have to, or actually, we have to insert. Remember, if they're not adjacent, we can't just do a quick analysis. So they're not adjacent columns now, so I have to go insert, and then I'm going to go over here to sort of my charts, and then there's all these different ones. So one to try to go is the scatter plot. And it doesn't know what I want to use, so I have to give it data. So if I go here, when I right click on it, I can select data, and then I can put maybe over here, I put these guys, and then over here, I might put these guys. What in the world was that? Well, I just almost had a seizure. What in the, no, messed me all up, my thought process. Let's delete this guy now. Go back. So this is our histogram, and now we want our ogive or our ogive. So, wrong button. How did we end up here? So anyhow, it's pretty easy to do this. You just Google it. You have data. You make a frequency table, then you make a cumulative table. So let's go back to Excel. So we're going to go to Insert. So maybe to make it a little quicker, we'll highlight these two columns. Oh, how do you do it? You got to hold Control to highlight two columns that are not adjacent. Then I'm going to go to Insert, and then I'm going to go to Scatter Plot. And if you want to do a scatter with lines, something like this, there you go. So this is what we call your ogive or your ogive. And it shows how the data accumulates. This is another way of sort of showing, and you're not seeing it. What in God's name? I hate tech. Why don't you guys yell at me? Well, you should be waving things. All right, so let me delete my my ogive. Let me remind you, are you guys at home seeing Excel at least? Hopefully, everybody seeing Excel? So I'm going to highlight my bins, and then I'm also going to highlight my accumulative column. And then I'm going to go to Insert, and then I'm going to go to Scatter Plot, and then I'm going to do the one with lines. And it makes this thing, which we're going to call the ogive or the ogive. And again, you could play around with what it looks like. You could change colors. You can change styles. Does anybody have a question? Now, what I would advise you do is, if you're having trouble with this, just go watch the video, and you could pause it. I mean, they're uploaded. It should be. Did I upload last week's? Should be. If not, I will do it this afternoon. It should be up there, and you can do that. Now, of course, we can determine other stuff too. We can get our mean and medians and all that stuff. Typically, most of us don't have a difficult time with that, but let's say we wanted to get our mean. Well, we just hit the function, and we know mean. Our mean is the average. So we'll click on average, and then all you have to do is highlight your numbers. And then it does it for you automatically. So here's my mean. So out of those 15, the average one is 89.74. And then I can do my median. Once again, that's built in. You can highlight the numbers again, and it'll spit it out for you. And then you can do mode. Once again, that's there, built in for you. And notice, the more you do this, the quicker you'll get at it. Uh-oh, what happened? Why did it get mad at me? Oh, that's because there is no mode. There's no duplicates, right? None. So you might say that that's non-available, as it did. Remember, the mode is the duplicate thing. And then, of course, you can do the variance and standard deviation. Now, we have a thing that we would come to here is, this is a sample of all WNBA players, right? So do we consider this a population or a sample? What would be what you consider? Are you just considering the top 15 players, or are you trying to get an idea of the league? Well, obviously, if you're trying to get an idea of the league, taking the 15 best is not the best way to go, right? You'd have to take it. So anyhow, let's just use variance, and we'll use population just because I didn't specifically say what you want to do. It's not clear how we'd want to do it here. So this is our variance. And then our standard deviation. Put that down here. By the way, if you use these just once or twice, those functions will always be there waiting for you. So this is your standard deviation. So maybe we can highlight this. We'll separate them going like this. Of course, I have them staggered like I'm a numbskull, but such is life. Does anybody have a comment or a question about this? Yeah.
So what's the control shift?
Control shift is for the frequency. So we wrote that down, I believe, at the end of last class. When you want to use the built-in frequency. But look, notice, I had 15 data points. Here's sort of my rule of thumb for counting on your own. If you can see all the data in one screen without scrolling, count by hand, right? That's what I did here. If you have more data, then you're going to want to use something more efficient. So now don't get it wrong. There is other things out there that are probably easier to learn than Excel maybe to do this. I don't know. But what I'm telling you is you should learn it in something. And Excel's pretty much, if you're here, you have computers you can use on campus, and they all have Excel. The fancy nerds would write all this on their own. They wouldn't use Excel. They'd use fancy software where they write their own Python code or R or some other fancy languages. We don't care about that. You can do this. This is completely fine. And again, you could do this by hand. I'm not worried about it. So the homework, I think, when did we even want to do? I think today. If you've already turned it in, that's fine, but you can resubmit it if you want. That was due last night. So maybe here, you can turn it in Friday. I don't care. Look, I want you to get something out of it. If you don't want to get anything out of it, then do the minimum. Just turn it in by hand. That's fine. But if you suffer through some of this, you're going to learn some stuff and get something out of it. That's sort of what we'd like you to do. Does anybody have any questions about this? So the key ideas here, and by the way, I will upload this to Canvas for you. Maybe I'll do that right now. Give me a second. Yeah, you guys can see it. Good. So give me a second. I'm going to upload this for you, legends. So where can I put it? Here, let's put it with the syllabus. That way you'll be able to find it. So we'll go to files, we'll go to upload. I have 2 files that I can choose from. So let's go to desktop, let's go to, where's it? Fall 1040, then we have NFL payrolls. We did that last time. Now I can't give you this one yet because it will tell me it's being used. Okay, that's fine. So we stop screen sharing for a second. Bear with me, and then I'm going to upload that. And then let's upload one more. Let's go to the one we just did, which would be the WNBA free throws. And now you have 2 things you can sort of play around with and perhaps learn from. Fair? Good. If you have questions, let me know. Does anybody else have a question about this? Again, you can do all this by hand. Like I said, if you want to do the cumulative by hand, you can count these. And so again, this was 4, 7, 12, 14, 15. And heck, you can even draw these by hand. If you wanted to draw the histogram, you could. You can do less than 87, and you could say, okay, this is height 4. You could say this is 4. And then if you want to go 87 to 89, this is, how many are here? There's 3 here. So you'd say this is height 3. And if you go 89 to say 90, or I'm sorry, 93 or whatever, 92. Then you have 5. Right, so you could do this by hand if you wanted to. I'm just telling you, my advice is to do it by hand, but also learn the Excel. That's my advice. Does anybody have any questions about this? You surely don't want to compute means and medians by hand. That's tedious, right? You don't want to be doing standard deviation by hand. I mean, you can, but why torture yourself? Your fingers will start to hurt. All right, any questions? All right, well, listen, I think let's stop it here. You guys, whatever you want to put into it until Friday, do it. If you have questions, please email me. If you want to Zoom or try to meet tomorrow or Friday, I'd be happy to do that. But if you don't, that's fine. I'm not going to be mad at you. And then starting next week, we're going to pick up on new stuff. There's no point in starting that today. All right. Then we got to figure out how to make sense of all this. Are these pictures worth our while? Is any of this stuff useful? All right, gang. Thank you very much. Have a good weekend. Please email me if you have questions. If you did already email me and I didn't respond yet, I will respond this afternoon or this evening. Thanks, guys. Take care.